Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Everything is fine here on Detention Block AA 23, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Mike, flying solo today to talk Star Wars with all you fans out there, specifically talking Andor now that that show has wrapped up, whether it's the season series, all the above. We are done, and there is a lot to say about it. But first of all, get the business elements out of the way really quick. If you're listening to us right now, hit that subscribe button, like this video, comment, rate, review, all the above. Any little thing you can do, we greatly appreciate it as it helps get our podcast and YouTube channel name out there amongst all the other Star Wars channels. So yeah, we greatly appreciate it. Once we hit 200 subscribers, we will be having a prize giveaway. So make sure if you subscribe to us, you are public so that we know you're a subscriber and can enter your name into the drawing. We'll do another one at 500, and the 500 one will be a big prize. So you're not going to want to miss that. Our chat is up and running. If you have any questions, comments, opinions, ideas, all the above, bring it to me. Would love to talk through it as well. As mentioned, we will be talking Andor. I won't be on too long today. We are going to be looking to talk about the final episodes on Friday, just with scheduling conflicts. There's a lot been going on. I know we didn't record last week. I was out of town in Wisconsin. My father just had his kidney removed. He had cancer on it. So got that taken care of. Successful procedure. Screened for if the cancer had spread anywhere. Luckily, nothing can be seen. I know the biggest concern was the lungs, but lungs came back clear. So he's in recovery now. But my wife and I wanted to make sure, and my son, that we would go to Wisconsin to be supportive for both my father and my mother during this process and help them out. So we weren't able to record again because I was out of town and busy. And then this week, other things got in the way, but I wanted to get on today just to express some quick thoughts and ride the excitement of the end of the show. But we will be recording Friday to go more in depth on some of the things I want to just bring up. But overall, all I can say is, how great was that? Holy cow. What a powerful show. What a powerful ending. I mean, this has to be some of the best, if not the best content we've gotten from Star Wars since Disney took it over. I mean, we felt that way about Rogue One when that movie came out. And this is on that level, if not above that. And it only adds to Rogue One, makes it even more powerful of a movie. It makes the OT even better, makes the prequels even better. It doesn't, as far as sequel, doesn't really impact that as much. I know people have their theories about, which I should say, spoilers alert. If you haven't watched the whole show, if you haven't finished it, throw in the spoiler tag. I will be talking about some of that stuff, especially the ending, what I was about to say. So don't want to spoil anything for anyone. If you haven't watched it, put us on pause, go watch the rest of the show, and then come back and listen to us. But no, just super. I was going to say, people have not conspiracy. People have theories that the kid is Poe Dameron, and sorry to say, it's not. Cool thought, cool idea, but unless they change canon, Poe already has parents that are known, and he was born, I think, what, 2 BBY or 2 after the Battle of ABY. So close. I mean, I can understand the timing and the thought process, but no, he's got different parents. So, and was born at a different time, and that's canon. Anyways, it's just so impressive how powerful this show was. And you didn't have things like lightsabers, you didn't have things like Jedi, Sith. For the most part, the Force. You did have Force healer. and the concept of the Force was brought up. I think the concept of no Jedi, I don't think that was just brought up in Rogue One. Um, but just amazing how powerful this show was without those elements. Just really focusing on the Empire and really focus on uh the rebellion. Just your ordinary people standing up to an empire that's very vicious. And this show really shed light on how bad the empire was and what levels they were willing to go um, to just innocent people. And it, I mean, we've had kind of an introduction to the things that the empire would do, but not to the level that we got with like the Gorman massacre. And we got a little bit of that too with kind of the massacre on Ferrix as well. So it gives to the level and the depth that the Empire would go to get their way. So just entirely impressed with this show. Tony Gilroy knocked it out of the park. If you ever Tony Gilroy, if you ever want to come back and do more Star Wars, I know you said already that you are done with the Star Wars franchise. I think you might have made the comment for now, so that kind of leaves it open-ended, but I think you were more speaking to in its entirety. But if you ever want to come back and make more Star Wars, like come on back, man. You did a great job with this. Well, I'll start with this. So I think it was after our last recording, we had a subscriber, Dart Decolot, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right, who shared an awesome thought. Bring a little like true history into the creation of the show. And I thought it was pretty much spot on. And come to find out, I mean, some of it might have been a little wrong, but I think there might be elements of it that are still true. But just wanted to recognize him and like the depth of this thought. So I'll just read what he said. So he said, "Thanks for sharing your thoughts on Andor. I have become absolutely obsessed with this series." Me too. Love the positive energy. I will definitely continue to listen to your content. And then this is where he gets into the history stuff. So Luthen Rael is one of my favorite new characters during this period of Star Wars. I think Luthen will not make it after the third chapter of A2. He made it past third chapter, but didn't make it past the fourth, early in the fourth. I've shared this before, but I think Luthen is based off of Jean Moulin, a French resistance leader during the early days of the German occupation of France. Moulin was charged by Charles de Gaulle to unite the different resistance factions. He eventually succeeded in doing so. Unfortunately, in 1943, he was betrayed, arrested, tortured by Klaus Barbie, and died in the custody of the SS while being trained off to Berlin. Like Luthen Rael, who who we know won't survive, Moulin never witnessed the liberation of France. Interesting, shortly after France was invaded, he was dismissed from the government post as a prefect. So he used his personal wealth to open an art gallery in Nice. As an art dealer, this cover allowed him to travel freely throughout France and conduct clandestine operations with his personal assistant, Daniel Courtier, also a spy and member of the French resistance army. So a lot of, similar aspects between Luthen and Moulin that he's bringing. Even, the assistants. We have Clea, who is the assistant, and just feels right on par with what was happening. Love how Gilroy enriches Star Wars lore with great characters based on historical heroes, villains, and events. I can't wait to watch this series. If you get a chance, look up Jean Moulin and his assistant. I think Gilroy has given us a new saga to Star Wars, the Andor saga. And you are absolutely 100% spot on there. Like, I'm seeing people on social media being like, my new favorite trilogy, Andor season 1, season 2, and Rogue One. Like, this isn't just great Star Wars. This is great cinema. This is great storytelling. And that's what we've been calling for so long, at least in the since in the Disney era. Like, there are other good Star Wars content out there that, I've enjoyed, but just not to this level, especially with the storytelling. And it's like you're not even pulling things in like Darth Vader, or you're not doing like cameos to boost the interest of the show. You're just using storytelling. You're using captivating characters, character development. You're using like in-depth situations that people can understand. Not, I mean, it's kind of real world, but it's not. I mean, like what the subscriber I was just telling you, the comparison to history, like it's there, but it's completely different. It's Star Wars. And I know I think there are some valid statements in terms of the show doesn't seem as Star Wars, which I mean, there can be truth to it because to a lot of people, Star Wars is like the Jedi and the Sith and the Force and elements like that. Like that's what screams Star Wars to people. So if you're one of those people, it's totally understandable that you just would not find the interest in this show as much. But that aside, it's hard to argue the storytelling and the acting, the character development, all those things I was listing. Like that is art, and that was done very well by Tony Gilroy and team. So just to speak to some of those things, uh, Tony Gilroy was even asked, like, why not bring in Darth Vader and or Grand Moff Tarkin? His response was great. It was, if I needed them, I would have brought them in. So, in other words, he didn't need them to make the show great or the story great. He already had an idea. He already had a story that he knew was captivating and he wanted to share. He didn't need Darth Vader to make this show any better. He was also asked, why not show resolution for Cassian's sister or Keener Loy? Like, those are two elements that people are like, all right, we didn't I mean, the show started in terms of Cassian searching for his sister, and it ended with him even kind of like dreaming about his sister or picturing his sister, but there was never any conclusion brought to that. We don't know what happened to the sister. Same with Kino Loy. Like the last time we see him, Andy Serkis's character was on Narkina 5, and he said he couldn't swim, so he didn't jump in. So we don't know what happened to him. So people are like, okay, what's happening with these characters? Even with the droid B2, though we did see him at the end playing like tag with another droid with Bix. So kind of resolution there, but we kind of left him for what, the full second half of season 2. So why not bring in resolution to that? And his response to this was great too. So he said, Andy, meaning Andy Serkis for portraying Kino, drop the mic, man. What am I going to do that's going to be better than what we did? All it does is minimize that moment. I knew a lot of people were talking about whether we had a way of bringing him back, but I didn't want to have that. I didn't want to have that sort of coincidental environment. Kino Loy is like the sister. People wanted to know if we're going to resolve the sister. And the sister in the beginning is so much more interesting to me as a deficit. She's much more valuable to me for Cassian as an absence. As he says in the end, maybe I should stop saving people. His need to return and save people and to be a savior and the compulsion to do that comes from his hole in his life. And I didn't really want to fill that in. So it was intentional. It was supposed to be a hole in the story because that was representative of Cassian and his life. The sister was a hole in his life because he never got resolution. Same with us in the story. Because Cassian never got resolution, we never got resolution. And then the same thing kind of happens with Andy Serkis's character. Kino doesn't get resolution, who was someone that was inspiring to Cassian and, set him on his way to where he is now, or RIP, as that is where he is now, but in the events that followed in the show. So all of that was very much intentional. Some things I just wanted to point out. These are in no specific order, but hoping to get to them more on Friday, when Bogey will be on. I think Greg will be on as well. So we can talk through many of these in more depth, but just want to throw these out there for like discussion points and some things I thought were super interesting in the back half of this show. Um, One of the talking points is Luthen offing Lonnie. So that was very fascinating. And I think we can all recognize that Lonnie was a little bit of a loose end. So it it was almost forced upon him that, if you wanted the best way to save your wife and kid was for Luthen to kill him, because then it makes him not look guilty. Because if he's guilty, if he goes on the run, then they're also on the run with or going after the wife and kid because he wanted to bring the wife and kid with him. But if Luthen offs him, then hey, the wife and kid will be safe. Unfortunate, there's a sacrifice there. Not the best for the wife and kid, but at least that they would be safe. It kind of goes back to that sunrise comment that Luthen made in season 1 to him when he says, I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. So in a way, Luthen is doing the same thing to Lonnie in this situation. So Lonnie's never going to see the sunrise, but his wife and kid now have the opportunity to see the sunrise. So very fascinating. Deidre Mira being sent to, I believe, is Narkina 5, if not a similar prison. So just very tragic, She was raised without her parents in like, what was it, imperial school or something like that. She was essentially raised by the Empire, and which is tragic in its first place. And then that just, corrupted her life, developing her to the imperial she is. I mean, she was great at her job and she was very intelligent, but she was just like set up for failure because it's within the Empire. She was made to be a bad person. And then her life is going to end likely in this prison or in solitude. So just a tragic story for her. And it was that scene with Krennic, like interrogating her, was powerful. And how insulting it had to be to Dedra, who's spending her life going after these rebels to bring an end to them. And Krennic is calling her a rebel spy. Like, that just had to be salt in the wound. And it just, again, so powerful. Awesome scene. Major Partagas offing himself. I thought it was interesting. The other Imperial, I can't remember his name, that came to, essentially he was going to be arrested. He had the 2 other stormtroopers, and they were going to come and take him for essentially failing at the duty of preventing the knowledge of the Death Star from leaking out. But he asked, like, may I have a moment to collect my thoughts to him? And there was just this mutual understanding that he was going to off himself. And I think we get that understanding when the other Imperial is standing out with the stormtroopers and they hear the gunshot, and the 2 stormtroopers like go to, oh, what happened? Let's go in. And he's like, no, he knew what happened. And he was giving him that respect, probably for all that he had done for the Empire leading up to that point, and just figured better for him just to off himself than go through the torture of either being in prison for the rest of his life like Dedra, or whatever was going to follow from his arrest. So fascinating. How dark and gruesome this show gets. There's no blood. I don't, at least not that I can recall seeing much blood. Because I mean, if it's blaster rifles, cauterizes the wound because it's, heat. But like, that was pretty scary. Many probably people were scared, but pretty gruesome seeing Kay using Hirt as a human shield. I don't even know if he needed to use him because we've seen those K droids, K2 droids get shot by blasters and really didn't do much, reflects off them. But like the guy is dead and every bullet or bolt that hits him just like flails him and kind of creepy looking in a dark hallway or a dark corridor of the apartment complex or whatever you want to call that. But that was pretty gruesome. That was a gruesome scene. So shows you that we can have this kind of stuff in Star Wars. Disney kind of Disneyfies things, but they didn't with this show, and it made it, in my opinion, that much better. Sure, you might push away from some of the younger audiences because maybe some parents don't want kids to see this level of violence, but for someone like me, like it makes that that much more interesting and more of an adult show. Let's see what else. Connecting elements I've listed. So Yavin, Naboo, because I believe that was Naboo where Clea and Luthen are sitting out by the lake. It's the flashback. Clea is younger, so is Luthen. And they are exploding the Imperial ships on that bridge, and that looks like the bridge. I don't know if it's the same exact one, but it looks like the type of bridge that was on Naboo when Padme had her funeral. The architecture on that planet looked very similar. The attire of the populace looked very similar. So I have to believe that was Naboo. So cool tie-in from the original, the prequels, and Yavin get an understanding of the development of that location as a rebel base in this show. Super awesome. I would have loved to see a little bit more of how they got to that point of bringing the rebels there. We had those, I don't know, kind of rebel gangs that intervened with Cassian and killed his counterpart when he stole the TIE fighter. So how did we get from those scenes to all of a sudden the Rebel Alliance headquarters base being there? I would love for those details to get fleshed out a little bit more, but awesome that we got to see more of Yavin, more of the crew from Rogue One that go to Scarif and essentially on a suicide mission. We see them training there. I forget the guy's name. I mean, we get Bail Organa, a lot more of him, a lot more of Mon Mothma. So again, more tie-ins to the original trilogy, more tie-ins to the prequels. But the guy, the kind of the military leader guy from Rogue One, we got more of him. Admiral Raddus, we got more of him. That was awesome because what a pivotal and awesome character in Rogue One, and such a admirable thing that he did to help the crew when no one else would, and which led to, getting the plans of the Death Star and saving the day in A New Hope. So we got more of Raddus. We got more of the Leader Council. So again, that's Bail Organa, Mon Mothma. Even some of the other ones that you see in Rogue One are there and represented. So that's all very cool. Tie-in at the end of season 2, episode 9 of Yeah. Oh, sorry. There's a awesome tie-in if you go and you watch episode 9 of season 2 of Andor. If you followed watching that with season 3, episode 18 of Rebels, it's like a perfect transition. Because in that Andor episode, we see Cassian escorting Mon Mothma out of Coruscant, getting her to safety. And then they even talk about Gold Squadron on their way to escort Mon Mothma. And then if you go into Rebels episode 3, season 18, season 3, episode 18, you see that Gold Squadron escorting of Mon Mothma. She talks about a speech that she has coming up, which she even mentions at the end of that episode in Andor that she's got another speech that she needs to prepare for. And in the Rebels episode, she mentions the speech she already made, where she's calling out Emperor Palpatine and kind of what that has set off in the galaxy by her saying that. So, really cool transition there. Of course, I mean, the feeling, the tone, and everything's going to be a little different going from Andor to Rebels. But if you put that aside and just follow the story, it's an awesome continuation there. So go check it out if you haven't. Uh, it's really neat that we got more context from the line "Rebellions are built on hope." It's pretty awesome that that starts just from a hotel clerk, a loyal Gorman standing up to the Empire, helping Cassian. That clerk tells Cassian that rebellions are built on hope, because I think Cassian made this statement, something along the lines of, "I hope you get what you want out of this. Like, by helping him, I hope you, in the long run, you get what you want." And then his response was, "Rebellions are built on hope." I don't know if he made it out because he had that thermal detonator that he used. He was sitting behind the desk of the hotel, and there were stormtroopers and stuff right outside the window, and he threw that grenade, and it exploded. It was a pretty big explosion, so I'm not sure if he survived. Maybe it's a very sturdy desk, but um, if the clerk sacrificed himself, that's just even more powerful. But really cool that that's where that line "Rebellions are built on hope" started from. So then Cassian passes that on to Jyn Erso, and then Jyn Erso relays that same message to the rebel leadership on Yavin 4 in the movie Rogue One. So really cool. Melshi's gun. So that started as Cyril's in season 1 on Ferrix, which Cassian obtained after encountering Cyril. He ended up giving that blaster rifle or pistol to Melshi after they escaped Narkina 5, then ends up with Vel, and Vel is she's on Yavin. She has that table that's got all the weapons in front of her. She picks up the blaster and she's like, "Whose is this?" And Melshi's back again and he says, "It's mine." So kind of cool to follow that Melshi's pistol. I already spoke to B2 not being left behind. So I'm glad we got resolution on B2. He's still alive. He's still kicking. What's the name of that planet? I can't remember. But I was calling it Iowa before because it was all like wheat or corn or something like that. But yeah, he's with Bix. They're all okay. And I know there's a lot of. Did we already talk about this? Yeah, we already did mention this about that not being Poe Dameron. So we see at the very end Cassian's son, or we're led to believe it's Cassian's son, which it has to be, with that Bix is holding. So a very powerful scene at the end. We understand the sacrifice that Cassian doesn't understand he made, which leads to a lot of opportunities for Star Wars. I'm sure it makes everyone wonder, who is this? Like, okay, does this child have any significance in the continuation stories? A lot of, like we mentioned before, people are saying Poe Dameron. It's not Poe Dameron, but it doesn't mean it isn't someone else. It doesn't have to be, though. The child is there to represent the sacrifice that Cassian made, whether he knew it or not. And when Bix told him that she's choosing the rebellion, she's choosing the rebellion for him. I thought that was an interesting take, because when we were seeing it first and she was saying, "I'm choosing the rebellion," I was interpreting it that she was choosing the rebellion over Cassian, meaning she was going to go off on her own missions, because she had been talking with Luthen and needed her healthy and everything. So it made you start to wonder, did Luthen have missions for her? Well, now, after this series finale, it seems like she was more speaking that she was choosing for Cassian, the rebellion, and she was going to go back and, have the child. So she probably knew of the child at that time, and didn't want Cassian to stop what he was doing for the rebellion because of the child. So again, just so many sacrifices here and so powerful. Um, Again, we don't need that kid to turn into anyone. It doesn't need to be anyone. But, you know, if Tony Gilroy comes with a later show and follows the kid, I'd be okay with that because he did such a great job here. Maybe well, no, that timing wouldn't work out. So anyways, the last kind of scene I wanted to point out was Bail Organa and the rebel leaders arguing with Cassian about whether or not the Death Star is real. Only Mon Mothma seems to believe him, but they're all going to find out pretty soon that he wasn't lying. But it's just very fascinating knowing what we know, like what happens to Bail Organa and his home planet of Alderaan, and like if they would have just intervened earlier, could that have prevented that from happening? Who knows? So interesting that Bail is resisting on this, yet comes to the ultimate demise as a result of the Death Star. So, and again, in that kind of argument scene, you get more of the leaders that we saw in Rogue One from the rebels in that, and they're all not agreeing with the Cassian, saying like Luthen is a maniac. How can you believe anything that he says? He works with Saw. That Saw is a maniac. Like, what are you doing? So just all very interesting stuff. Let me just scroll through my notes here really quick. I did see a pretty cool quote on Twitter or X, and I wanted to share it. It said, "The show started with two men moving in the shadows and choosing to sacrifice everything to make a sunrise they would not see, and it ended with the two women they loved most stepping into that sunlight and having a chance at peace." So the overall message of the show, sacrifice their lives for the ultimate goal of peace, they did obtain that success. So did come with a price to pay, their own lives, but they knew that from the get-go. So just thought that was a powerful line I saw from X. Let's see. Yeah, I think at most everything else I'm just going to hold off on. Again, I just wanted to keep this one short, just point out a few things top of my head that I wanted to talk about after watching it. I did watch it yesterday. I was planning on only watching one, and if you watch those episodes, couldn't just take in one. I was like, all right, I'm going to need to watch the next. And then after the second one, okay, I'm going to need to finish it off. So that's how great it was and how captivated I was. So I did end up watching the rest. I stayed up, I think, until 1:30 in the morning, but it was worth it. Sacrifice was worth it. But again, on Friday, we'll have likely Bogey and Greg joining us, and we'll talk through the second half of the season, essentially. And maybe we'll talk through some of these points and get their opinions on everything. And I'm definitely fascinated to see or hear their points of view and how they enjoy the show. But I can't reiterate it enough. It knocked it out of the park. And I just hope this sets a precedent for the type of content for Star Wars we can have going forward. Not that everything has to be like this. Not every show needs to be to this level, just because of the expansive audience that Star Wars brings in. But can we still get more of this? And when we have feature films, can it be to this level? And if you can get Tony Gilroy and have him kind of do the same thing, but for the second Death Star. I mean, we all know the line from Mon Mothma in Return of the Jedi. Many Bothans died to bring us this information. There is a story there. There is definitely a story there. One probably just as interesting and captivating as obtaining the original Death Star plans. Tony Gilroy, bring it to life. I trust you to make that happen. Again, you probably won't. You might be done with Star Wars. And who knows, maybe it'd be too similar of a show to do that for the second Death Star. But there's other cool kind of spy, rebel, underground stuff that you can explore leading up to Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi outside of the Death Stars. There's so many different stories we could tell. And I would love to see him on this level, this depth, and this dark. Like I'm all for that. So anyways, I will wrap this up. So thank you for tuning in today. Again, we'll be recording on Friday. I have more thoughts from Greg and Bogey, hopefully. But if you're listening to us right now, hit that subscribe button, like this video, rate, review, comment. Again, we'll have a prize giveaway once we hit 200 subscribers, and then we'll have a very big prize giveaway at 500 subscribers. So don't miss out on that. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. And we look forward to talking with everyone again on Friday. Talk more Andor. So, and then after that, we still have Tales of the Underworld to talk about. So we'll probably talk about that next week. But until then, as always, may the Force be with you.
Thanks for calling. This is Han Solo, and I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours right here on the Midnight Shift. Something's